Well, welcome everyone. This is the Overcoming Anxiety and Building Resilience Community Seminar. Thank you so much for coming out in the rain. We really appreciate your presence here. Just so you know, I will be speaking in Spanish for our Spanish-speaking participants today after the introduction. Hablaré en español al terminar esta introducción en inglés. I'm Dr. Maria Cornejo Garcia. I'm a bilingual staff psychologist at the Department of Health and Human Services in Hoffman Estates. Our Director of Health and Human Services, Dr. Monica Saavedra, over here, and I would like to welcome you to Overcoming Anxiety and Building Resilience Community Seminar. We're so happy that you joined us today. We hope you enjoyed today's seminar, which is the first one of many to come to you, sponsored through our village and the Cook County Public Health Department Building Healthy Communities Grant. The Building Healthy Communities Grant was awarded to HHS earlier this year. This federal grant was awarded to us for a period of 4 years through the American Rescue Plan Act, or ARPA, of 2021. We are excited that this grant will help us expand our bilingual Spanish and English services and our outreach programming to the community with free community seminars, such as this one, which we expect to provide about once per month on various mental health topics. As part of our grant, we ask that you complete a survey at the end of today's seminar that will help us collect data on our programming, and we'll invite you to share your ideas on possible future topics. Okay, I'll be speaking in Spanish now. Bienvenidos a todos, soy la doctora María Cornejo García. Soy una psicóloga bilingüe en el Departamento de Salud y Servicios Humanos en Hoffman Estates. Nuestra directora del Departamento de Salud y Servicios Humanos, la doctora Mónica Saavedra, y yo queremos darle la bienvenida a nuestro seminario comunitario Supere la Ansiedad y Crea la Resiliencia. Estamos contentas de que hayan llegado a acompañarnos hoy día. Esperamos que les agrade el seminario de hoy, que es la primera de muchos que patrocinará el Hoffman Estates y el Departamento de Salud Pública de Cook County, subvención del crecimiento de comunidades saludables. Recibimos esta subvención temprano en el 2023 por un periodo de 4 años por la Ley Federal del Plan de Rescate Americano del 2021. Estamos entusiasmados que esta subvención nos ayudará a ampliar nuestros servicios bilingües y nuestra programación a la comunidad con seminarios gratis como este. Esperamos poder proveer seminarios mensualmente sobre varios temas de salud mental. Como parte de esta subvención, le pedimos que complete una encuesta al término del seminario que nos ayudará a colectar datos sobre nuestra programación y les invitará a que compartan ideas sobre temas para el futuro. Okay. Ahora hablaré de nuevo en inglés para presentarle a nuestra presentadora de hoy, la doctora Alicia Lazos. Okay, a bit about our presenter today, Dr. Alicia Lazos. Okay. So Dr. Alicia Lazos is a licensed clinical psychologist. She's the founder and director of Family Bridges, an international non-for-profit organization focused on family strengthening and wellness programs with operating programs in Chicago, Phoenix, Wisconsin, Puerto Rico, and Costa Rica, Camarines, Spain, and Salcedo, Dominican Republic. And Bridges Excel, a professional development and coaching business. Under her leadership, Family Bridges has expanded their reach globally through their mini drama series, Que Gente Mi Gente, airing in 27 radio markets worldwide. Dr. Lazos has developed research-based curricula on conflict resolution and stress management based on outcomes of programs delivered to more than 170,000. Dr. Lazos was the primary author of the Toolkit for Stakeholders Working with Latino Individuals, Couples and Families, published by the National Resource Center for Healthy Marriages and Families in 2013. In 2013, Dr. Lazos also authored Romance Perpetuo, a resource book for Latino couples intended to help strengthen relationships and empower couples with communication and conflict resolution skills. And in 2017, she co-authored The Struggle is Real, Modern Parenting. She has overseen the development of several other programs, such as a micro-enterprise program as a small business incubator. In the last decade, Dr. Lazos has overseen the evaluation of programs delivered in 4 federally sponsored programs across the nation, and is also coordinating efforts for long-term evaluation projects for programs delivered in the community. She serves on the board of a couple of national non-for-profits, and for 4 years was part of the Hispanic Research Work Group held by the Office of Planning, Research, and Evaluation within the Administration of Children and Families, U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. She has received numerous awards, most recently in 2023, being awarded an honorary doctorate of humanities from Lakeland University in Wisconsin. I'm now going to repeat what I just said in Spanish. La doctora Laos es una psicóloga clínica licenciada, es fundadora y directora de Family Bridges o Lazos de Familia, una organización internacional sin fines de lucro, enfocada en programas de fortalecimiento familiar y bienestar con programas operativos en Chicago, Phoenix, Wisconsin, Puerto Rico y Costa Rica, Camarines, España y Salcedo, República Dominicana. Y Bridges XL, una empresa de desarrollo profesional y coaching. Bajo su liderazgo, Family Bridges o Lazos de Familia ha expandido su alcance a nivel mundial a través de su miniserie dramática ¿Qué gente, mi gente?, que se transmite en 27 mercados de radio en todo el mundo. La doctora Laos también ha desarrollado currículos basados en la investigación sobre resolución de conflictos y manejo del estrés basados en los resultados de los programas entregados a más de 170,000. La doctora Laos fue la autora principal del juego de herramientas para las partes interesadas que trabajan con individuos, parejas y familias latinas, publicado por el Centro Nacional de Recursos por el Matrimonio y las Familias Saludables en el 2013. En el 2013, la doctora Laos también fue autora de Romance Perpetuo, un libro de recursos para parejas latinas destinado a ayudar a fortalecer las relaciones y empoderar las parejas con habilidades de comunicación y resolución de conflictos. Y en el 2017 fue coautora de La lucha es real, crianza moderna. Ha supervisado el desarrollo de varios otros programas, así como un programa de microempresas, como incubadora de pequeñas empresas. En la última década, la doctora Laos ha supervisado la evaluación de programas entregados en 4 programas patrocinados por el gobierno federal en todo el país y también está coordinado esfuerzos para proyectos de evaluación a largo plazo para programas entregados en la comunidad. Es miembro de la junta directiva de un par de organizaciones nacionales sin fines de lucro y durante 4 años formó parte del grupo de trabajo de investigación hispana organizado por la Oficina de Planificación, Investigación y Evaluación dentro de la Administración de Niños y Familias del Departamento de Salud y Servicios Humanos de los Estados Unidos. Ha recibido numerosos premios, más recientemente en el 2023 recibió un doctorado honorario en Humanidades de la Universidad de Lakeland en Wisconsin. Muy agradecida de que esté con nosotros mi colega y amiga, la doctora Laos. Favor de darle la bienvenida a la doctora. We are grateful to have Dr. Alicia Laos with us to present today. Please give her a warm welcome to my colleague and my friend, Dr. Alicia Laos.
Thank you. Thank you. Un honor estar con ustedes. Y gracias por esa linda introducción, Maria. Thank you so much for the beautiful introduction. Can you guys recall the last time you were lost? ¿Se recuerdan la última vez que se perdieron? What were some of the feelings that you had when you were lost? ¿Qué son algunos de los sentimientos que les viene cuando se perdieron? Well, a few years ago, my kids, I have 2 children, ages now 14 and 10, but at the time they were 4 years younger, and my husband, we were in Spain and we went on a hiking trip in the Pyrenees Mountains. Hace unos años nosotros, mi esposo y yo, mis hijos de 10 y ahora tienen 10 y 14 años, pero en ese entonces tenían 4 años menos, fuimos a un hike en las montañas entre España y Francia. And we thought it was great. We were going to go on this hike, and it was supposed to be just a 2-hour hike. We had a map, we had directions. Teníamos un mapa, teníamos direcciones, sabíamos cómo íbamos a llegar. Entusiasmado. And it was rather magical because as we were walking, literally we saw butterflies that were just hovering over us, and we could smell the scent of pine trees. Se sentía mágico, o sea, escucharnos los pajaritos, estaban las mariposas y se olía ese olor tan fresco, ¿no? A las matas, se veía en el bosque. We could see just as far as we could see mountains. It was amazing. We were so happy. We were so excited. Estábamos súper. But, 2 hours in, we didn't find this place that we were supposed to find. Ya 2 horas, nada. No encontramos el lugar. 3 horas, 3 hours, and we still couldn't find it. And now all of a sudden I start thinking, oh no, we're in the middle of nowhere. We have little kids. Do I have enough provision? Are we going to get lost? Estamos en el medio de ningún lugar. Tengo suficiente comida. ¿Qué nos va a pasar aquí? Is there a bear? El teléfono no está funcionando. The phone is not working. And all of a sudden, what starts happening to my heart? Starts pumping really fast. I'd start feeling out a sense of, unsettlement. And I'm looking at my kids and just smiling and pretending that everything's okay, and looking at my husband freaking out. Yo estoy viendo a mis niños, todo tranquilo, sonriendo, todo bien internamente. I don't have enough food, no tengo suficiente comida. ¿Qué pasa si nos quedamos aquí estancados? So I start having all of these thoughts, todos esos pensamientos comienzan a entrar, y estoy pensando lo peor. So I start thinking the worst things that could happen. And at that moment, we're flustered, frustrated, and we start being short with each other, right? En ese momento ya comenzamos a ser cortantes el uno con el otro, especialmente con mi esposo. I start being really short with my husband, and like, you should know better, and we should have this, and shoulds, and shoulds, and shoulds, y comenzamos a deberías, y por qué no, y comenzamos, no, ¿a qué hacer? Comenzar a criticarnos el uno con el otro. Eso no ayuda, that doesn't really help, it actually just makes the situation what? Worse, peor, y peor, nos confundimos más, and we just got confused, until finalmente decimos, vamos a parar, y just vamos a respirar profundo, vamos a orientarnos de nuevo, y como que respiramos, nos comimos unos granola bars, como que tomamos un giro. So we stopped, we relaxed, we had some granola bars, we just kind of took some water, and then my husband and my son decided to explore a little bit while I stayed, not very far, and lo and behold, we were just going in circles, and we found the little tiny juncture that we had missed. So justo después, minutos después, encontramos el camino, and we were able to find the caves, buscamos y encontramos las cuevas that we were going to go and check out, and oh, what a relief to finally arrive at our destination. Qué gusto, qué tranquilidad cuando finalmente llegamos al destino. Something that was going to take 2 hours ended up taking us 6 hours, because by the time all of this happened, and we had little kids in the middle of a country that was foreign, wow, it's awful to be lost, isn't it? So I asked you earlier, what were some of the feelings that you have experienced when you have gotten lost? Les pregunté más temprano, ¿cuáles son algunos de los sentimientos que ustedes han tenido cuando se han perdido? Can you guys share with me?
Fear.
Temor, yeah. Fear, temor. Panic, yeah, pánico.
Just giving up.
Uno se quiere dar por vencido, yeah, we just want to give up. Frustration, qué frustración.
High blood pressure, like your pressure changes.
Yeah, la presión sube, yeah, you feel that pressure.
What did you say?
It's happened to me once, like nearby.
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys know Boston, right? So somehow it was real dark, and I missed where I parked my car. I keep going around, and it was like a bit of like 8 o'clock, it was still dark. And I was like, okay, I had a granola, and I got that. And I guess I just came with it until the morning. I was like, just eating.
So uno se quiere dar por vencido. También tuvo la experiencia del granola y estar dando vueltas. So we have all of those feelings of feeling flustered and overwhelmed, and it's natural. It's kind of like that, right, with life when we are facing anxiety. Es así cuando estamos dirigiendo o enfrentando una situación de ansiedad. Now, it could be situational, ¿verdad? Puede ser algo de situación, because we got lost, like our example, or it could be something that's more pervasive, right, that we experience on an ongoing basis. Puede ser algo por una situación o una circunstancia, como habíamos hablado, o algo que persevera. So today we're going to talk about, anxiety, and then we're going to talk about resilience, overcoming anxiety and resilience. So hoy día vamos a hablar, we're going to talk about how is it that we manage tension specifically in our objectives. So as we talk about anxiety and we unpack that, and we unpack resilience, mientras hablamos sobre la ansiedad y cómo lo podemos manejar y la resiliencia, vamos a ver 3 puntos. We're going to look at 3 objectives. How do you manage tension? ¿Cómo es que nosotros manejamos la tensión? Because we're going to get lost in life. We're going to get overwhelmed in life. We're going to feel that frustration. Nos vamos a sentir frustrados, sobrecargados, con pánico. Vamos a tener circunstancias que traen eso. So how do we manage that? So we'll look at that. We'll look at a model of how to deal with tension face to face. I'll introduce that to you today. Vamos a ver un modelo de cómo enfrentar la tensión. Because it would have been great, in my example, to have had a GPS, right? Hubiera sido perfecto tener un GPS en ese instante cuando uno se pierde. But not having it, we feel disoriented. So tension comes, las tensiones van a llegar en la vida y tenemos que manejarlas. ¿Cuál es el GPS? ¿Cuál es el mapa de dirección que podemos tener para poder enfrentarlas? So what's our GPS to manage tension? So we're going to talk about a model to be able to facilitate that. And then why is it that anxiety takes over? Why is it that it's so overriding and it makes us just not think straight, right? ¿Por qué es que la ansiedad nos sobrecarga y no nos permite avanzar? Vamos a ver eso. Y lo tercero es, what is resilience and how do I recuperate? How do I get better? ¿Qué es la resiliencia? ¿Qué significa? Y cómo podemos llenarlo de destrezas para poder manejar las circunstancias. So we'll look at those 3 points in our time together today. So let's look at how do you manage tension. Vamos a ver sobre cómo manejar la tensión. Y le voy a pedir, so we're going to have some handouts that we'll pass out. This model, el modelo que le voy a presentar, this model, we call it the face model. And the idea is let's face the situation, let's face the tensions in our life. ¿Cómo podemos enfrentar las circunstancias que nos vienen so we manage them? We tend to cope in lots of different ways. Cuando nos vienen circunstancias en la vida, we cope in so many different ways. Manejamos las circunstancias very different ways. What are different ways that naturally you see that people manage tension? ¿Cuáles son algunas maneras de las cuales ustedes ven que las personas manejan la tensión?
Sometimes just grin and bear it.
Grin and bear, right? Just buckle up. A veces ahí nos ponemos fuertes, ¿no? What else?
You write a plan that you can possibly do with possibilities and try to rank them 1, 2, 3.
Hacer un plan, right? Do a plan. How do we rank them? Yeah.
Slow down, do something kind of like different, listen to music, go for a walk, walk in the garden.
Distraernos, hacer algo diferente, right? Bajar las defensas. So those are some good ideas, right? Esas son algunas maneras para manejarlas. Some of those things are really helpful, and some of those things sometimes don't work as well. So let's look at this face model. This face model is a model we've developed back in 2010, and we've had the chance of delivering this model and talking about it with couples and individuals, both in corporate settings, in community settings, and it's just a thinking model. It's just a way of thinking. So when you're stuck in a situation, you break the situation down, you analyze it, you detect, become a detective, instead of it being a big knot that you're just frozen and overwhelmed. So es un modelo que les puede ayudar, y así como un GPS le ayuda a llegar a su destinación, a facilitar el progreso, el manejar la atención. So we'll break that down for you guys today, start today, and there's at the end a resource where you can download the whole time. So we'll only get to a little bit today, but you can look at the end, there's a resource, and you can listen to the whole thing. So vamos a comenzar a presentarle este modelo. So en la vida hay problemas, hay situaciones que llegan constantemente, right? There's always problems that come in life, whether it's with your kids. We were talking about children when we started. Whether it's with your car, whether it's with finances, whether it's with a partner, whether it's with your coworker, right? Relationships are everywhere. En la vida vamos a tener problemas con los hijos, con los nietos, con los sobrinos, con el vecino, con el empleado. Todo tipo de problemas relacionales nos van a llegar. And so the situations happen and we have ideas. Tenemos ideas, right? We have ideas about how that situation should be handled. And we have expectations and we have associations that come to mind. Tenemos asociaciones, expectaciones de cómo deberían. And that generates feelings of anger or sadness or frustration. So my son, mi hijo, tiene 14 años and he likes gardening. Le gusta hacer jardinería. Bueno, durante COVID, that's what he started to do during COVID. And so a couple years ago, he started growing pumpkins. So decidió hacer calabazas. Bueno, el primer año lo pusimos en so that we didn't want pumpkins all over my yard. No quería yo calabazas todo alrededor. Le puse como un trellis, ¿verdad? Le puse pues algo para que pudiera crecer arriba. And then the first year, the pumpkins tiene como que la mano muy bien, le salen las cosas. So it worked, we got the pumpkins, and these pumpkins grew over the vine, and then we had these pumpkins like growing down. Teníamos estos calabazas que estaban. Well, we didn't know anything, and we were really scared. So what did we do? We had the anxiety. He worked so hard. He was looking at the seeds, so much time. Poor pumpkins. I couldn't believe that they could fall. So tenía todo el temor yo de que las calabazas iban a caer debajo de donde tenía. And what did we do? We brought some sticks and all sorts of stuff to sustain the pumpkins, ¿no? Porque teníamos temor de que las calabazas se iban a caer. Le pusimos por todo tipo de cosas, ¿no? But somebody then, le estábamos compartiendo, we were talking about these pumpkins, and le estábamos hablando a alguien, y sucede que alguien que sabía de eso, and someone informed us, we didn't have to do that the pumpkins would grow on their own. So sure enough, this year, we stayed there looking at the pumpkins, and we were like, oh no, they're going to fall. Mirando estos calabazas que igual crecieron, pero vamos a confiar con lo que pasó. Sure enough, the vines, right, the pumpkins grow these vines and stems, they grew in proportion to the size of the pumpkins. So, estas calabazas crecieron en proporción perdón, los vines, no sé cómo lo decimos en español, beuco, entonces crecieron en proporción de la calabaza y estaba ahí, floreció y ya estábamos hasta comiendo, ya comenzamos a comer pumpkin bread, ya comenzamos a comer todo tipo de cosas de calabaza porque nunca se cayó y tuvo fruto. Pero una circunstancia, ¿verdad? A situation, something simple, and it created in us the first time what? Ese sentimiento de temor, algo tan sencillo, something so simple, and here we were fretting over it, and it created some anxiety, a little bit of anxiety. So then we went in and jumped in to try to fix it. So por esa ansiedad nos metimos la mano y quisimos hacer algo, ¿verdad? Para bajar la tensión, even though that solution wasn't necessarily the case. Well, that was a very simple example that I just gave you. Le di un ejemplo muy, muy sencillo. But how many times do we worry? Do we get overwhelmed? Do we get anxious? And because of that anxiety, we step in and do something to self-soothe. Well, the pumpkin fell in the sticks, that was inconsequential. Eso no tenía nada que ver si se callaba la calabaza, okay, you know. Pero en la vida hacemos eso constantemente, ¿verdad? Tenemos temor, tenemos ansiedad, nos sobreabrumamos y metemos mano, una intervención. Now, that intervention that we can have could be what? Positive, or it could be problematic, right? What are some of the problematic examples that you've seen that we've dealt with in life to self-soothe? ¿Cuáles son algunas de las cosas que hacemos como humanos que no son buenas para manejar la ansiedad? Comer demasiado, ¿no? Yeah. Oh. Drugs, drinking, las drogas, el tomar, algo. Comer chocolate. Oh, but a little bit is so good. A little bit of chocolate is good, right? Pero mucho. Dark chocolate. Yeah. Estar todo el día Netflixing por horas y horas, ¿verdad? O estar tiempo y tiempo en Instagram, being so much time in the social medias, hours and hours, or just kind of numbing ourselves. No estamos entumeciendo al sentimiento, escapándonos. No. All those things, if they're a little distraction, it's okay for a little bit from time to time. But when it becomes a habit and it interferes with our ability to function or our ability to just follow through with our responsibilities, then it becomes a problem. Entonces, esos escapes, si uno se distrae por un ratico, ningún problema. Pero cuando se vuelven un hábito y lo hacemos perpetuamente, entonces interfiere con el trabajo, con la escuela, con las responsabilidades, ahí es un problema. So, en el mundo, en la vida tenemos todos estos. So, the model of FACE, what is it? Primero, the first thing with the FACE model is let's look at what our feelings are because we have them. So let's recognize that we have them, that we're emotive individuals, that we have emotions. So we're going to look at that. And then we're going to look at the assumptions. What is it that I tell myself? So primero, las emociones. En el modelo en español lo llamamos ESRE. Tenemos las emociones, so vamos a detenernos y observarlas. Third is there's always a comeback. Because we have emotions, because we think and those thoughts influence how we feel, we walk around with sometimes negative or positive energy, and other people pick that up and they come back, right? What do other people do? They roll their eyes, or they give you a hug, or they shut the door on you. There's a comeback, right? Entonces, en el modelo ESRE vemos las emociones y tenemos pensamientos, suposiciones, y esas suposiciones ocasionan que otras personas tengan una reacción contra uno. Y esa reacción puede ser positiva o negativa, ¿verdad? Tiran la puerta, ¿verdad? O te gritan. And then E es efecto, it's effect. How do we treat ourselves? ¿Cómo nos tratamos a nosotros mismos como consecuencia? What do I do to myself as a result of the situation? Do I sleep all day? Me meto debajo de las cobijas. O, do I go for a walk? Do I just sit back and relax? Or do I give up? Forget it. What do I do as a result of the consequence? ¿Cómo me trato yo a mí misma? How do I treat myself as a result of the circumstance? So with the FACE model, you have a situation and a circumstance. Tiene una situación, tiene una circunstancia, y en ese instante, boom, you might not necessarily think of all of these things. Tienes una situación, una circunstancia, tal vez no vas a pensar en ese instante sobre la situación, but maybe before you're going to bed, tal vez antes de ir a dormir, en vez de estar ahí dándole vueltas y vueltas y vueltas y como que no le entras, instead of just at night, you can't sleep and you're just kind of rolling up in bed, if you stop and you go, okay, what's going on in my heart? Paras y dices, okay, ¿qué es lo que está pasando en mi corazón? And then you go, what am I thinking about? ¿Qué historia, qué cuento me está diciendo? O, se detiene y luego dice, what are other people picking up? What am I seeing from others? ¿Qué están otras personas haciendo? What are other people doing? Y ¿cómo me estoy tratando yo a mí misma? How am I treating myself? So it's just a way to look at a situation and break it down. And then you can move forward accordingly. So we're going to spend some time under F and A, just a little bit more. Vamos a pasar un poquito de tiempo viendo el F y A, pero antes, si miran a sus hojas, but before we move on, and we're going to spend some time on the F and A, vamos a ver E y S si tienen la de español. Les voy a pedir que primero abran la página y van a escribir una situación que ustedes han tenido. So if you could just write right here where it says notes, a situation that you might be facing. Something, it doesn't have to be something very complicated, just something simple like I shared, the pumpkin experience, getting lost, or something, your neighbor keeps doing something, or something with your coworker. But what is a situation that you've been experienced, and just write down what happened, where it happened, what, where, who, when. Entonces escriban ahí una circunstancia que han vivido en las últimas semanas. Puede ser algo sencillo como mi ejemplo de la calabaza o del ejemplo de perder, de que me perdí. Y escriban qué pasó, dónde ocurrió. I'm not going to ask you to share it with others. It's just for yourself. No van a tener que compartirlo con otros, pero simplemente es para ustedes mismos. So for the purposes of this exercise and this model, para el propósito de este ejercicio y este modelo, when we talk about feelings, cuando hablamos de las emociones, es un poco más global. We're talking about it a little bit more global. We're thinking about what I think, what I feel, what I wish, lo que pienso, lo que deseo, lo que me gustaría, ¿no? Entonces ya establecimos que tenemos emociones. So we already established that we have emotions. They are a part of who we are. And it's really important to be able to take a moment and pause and recognize them. Oftentimes we ignore them, we push it aside, we put it under the rug, and then that takes a toll on us because it usually goes somewhere. Where does it go? It goes in our body, right? We try to stuff it, but it stays in there. Una de las primeras cosas que tenemos que hacer es observar, notar. ¿Cuáles son nuestras emociones? ¿Cuáles son esos sentimientos? Another very simple definition of emotions is basically energy in motion. Otra definición sencilla de las emociones es ¿qué? Energía que está movilizándose. And in this vision here, in this picture, en esta foto, pueden ver que es que un ferrocarril. You see it as a roller coaster ride. How many people here like to go on a roller coaster ride or liked it when you were younger? ¿Les gusta? ¿Sí? ¿Qué pasa when you're just kind of going up? What happens when you're going up? You know, how does your heart go? ¿Verdad? And you're kind of feeling the expectation. Estás como que anticipando, ¿verdad? Yeah, and then you get to the top, and then finally, what happens? Whoo! You know, but you feel it, like, right? Sientes eso cuando estás subiendo la cima. So this is another example of how emotions are, right? Este es otro ejemplo de cómo son las emociones, como un ferrocarril cuando estamos corriendo. Sube, right? It goes up. A situation starts gradually kind of happening, and then it intensifies. Una situación pasa, la emoción primero puede ser leve y luego se intensifica. It's almost like the volume of the emotion gets hyped. It gets really loud. ¿No? La emoción, si la podemos ver como un volumen, aumenta. Comienza despacito, como el ferrocarril, starts slow, and then boom, it starts picking up, and then it drops. And that's really what happens. Now, life is full of things that are like this. There's ups and downs. La vida está llena de circunstancias. We already saw it, that have a high and an up. Está llena de circunstancias que suben y altan constantemente. This is normal, right? And we are to expect it. And there's good things and there's difficult things. This slide here, I have it in Spanish, but you could also see it as another way. Now here, I have numbers on it. I have numbers below and numbers on the vertical and horizontal side. Aquí tengo la misma ola, right? You see the same curva, pero aquí van a ver los tiempos y la intensidad. And if we slow down, si podemos ponernos la situación un poco más al paso, ¿verdad? Podemos a veces detener y ver que esas emociones cuando están bien altas pueden tener un número más intenso. So when we are right at the climax, right at the top of the pinnacle, right, that emotion is really tense. And if we were to give it a number of anxiety, when we're all the way at the top, it could be like really loud. It could be a 10, right? Or depending on who you are, it could be an 8, because maybe this is no big deal for you, this situation. Dependiendo en quién eres y la circunstancia, hay un nivel que le podemos calificar a esa emoción. Depending on the situation, we can give it a piece. Now, once you're up on that ride and you're up there, there's no way to get back down. You're up there, right? Y una vez que te comprometiste y estás en el ferrocarril, no puedes salir. You're already committed. So when you're up here, and in this case, if it's anxiety and you're all the way at the top, it's just going to happen, right? If you're having that strong panic attack and you're right there and it's a 10, it's hard to come down, right? There's exercises you could do, but it's difficult to control because you're already committed. So, ¿cuándo es el mejor tiempo de intervenir? When is the best time to intervene when you're having an anxiety attack? Of course, you have to do something, right? When you're very intense in that anxiety or in that strong feeling. Is it over here before it starts, like very low? There's things you can do here, right? Hay cosas que podemos hacer antes de que llegue acá, y hay cosas que podemos hacer. There's things we can do all along, right? But once we're full throttle, it's hard to slow it down. Hay cosas que podemos hacer, intervenciones antes, durante y después. But which one intervention do you think will be easier for us to master? ¿Cuándo piensan que va a ser mucho más fácil o accesible poder sobrellevar o hacer una intervención? ¿Antes, después o durante? When do you think it's easier to master or try to intervene? Before, during, or after? Before. So a lot of our work with discovering and being more attentive to our emotions is becoming self-aware about what's going on in my body so I can intervene before. Entonces, una de las cosas que tenemos que hacer para poder intervenir es reconocer y observar qué es lo que está pasando en mi cuerpo intervenir antes de la circunstancia, aprender. And it's also great to learn what to do during, and it's also great to learn what to do after. But if we can get really good, si nos podemos poner bien antes, that's going to be incredibly helpful. Nos va a ayudar bastante. Oh, yes.
But if you don't know that the hill is coming, you don't know the emotions are coming, how can you intervene ahead of time? Now, if you're going onto a roller coaster, you can see it. You know,
Right.
But in life, something's going to happen. If you can't anticipate it, you can't really intervene until you're up on it, and then you got to respond to it.
Right. La pregunta está muy buena. ¿Qué va a pasar cuando llega una circunstancia, te viene a tope y tú no lo sabías que te ibas a venir? And so much of life is like that. It just catches you out of breath. So obviously, under those circumstances, we just have to learn these types of tools and resources and build our reserves so that we have where to draw from when the time calls for it. But there's so many other circumstances that we can proactively attune to. So when we're responding to those things in due time and in due course, then we're going to have more energy to deal with the things that are just going to hit us. So la pregunta estaba muy buena. Hay cosas que nos van a llegar si no nos esperamos. Pero si tenemos reservas y podemos aprender a manejar las circunstancias, el día y la hora cuando nos llega algo y no lo sabemos, vamos a tener más reservas para responder y más energía. Because and we're going to talk a little bit about resilience in a moment. So we have to get really good at observing our emotions. Nos tenemos que ser muy buenos en observar nuestras emociones, saber lo que está pasando dentro. No necesariamente para tomar decisiones basadas en nuestras emociones, pero para absorber y ver lo que está pasando. Y entonces cuando vemos las emociones, podemos intervenir y apropiadamente saber qué hacer. So as we observe what's going on in our body, in our mind, then we can slow down the process and then intervene and do some really great coping skills that then help us move forward. So we have to, but if we just ignore it and we just kind of keep going, well, those emotions are there. Where are they going to go? They're going to go to our body, right? Or they're going to go at a fighting match with someone. Or we're going to become short-tempered, or we get all these symptoms. So we have to get really good about slowing down and seeing what's happening with ourselves. So another way to look at what's the bell, right, that roller coaster bell, is looking at it like an iceberg, right? What we tend to see is what's anxiety. So in this case, what is it that we tend to see? We see the behavior. Podemos ver muchas veces, si lo vemos como este iceberg, ¿no? Que está por la superficie, podemos ver las conductas. ¿Y cuáles son las cosas que usualmente que vemos que están arriba? Que dicen que es ansiedad. What are the things that we see that is like anxiety? What is it that we see that says that's anxiety? Right, like biting nails. What is another behavior that we see that says that looks like anxiety? ¿Cuál es otra cosa que vemos físicamente que nos dice que es ansiedad? Yeah, like this, right?
Shaking or tapping,
Yeah.
fidgeting.
What else? ¿Qué otra cosa podemos hacer? Huh? Yeah, right?
Play with your hair. Sweating.
Yeah, sudar, ¿verdad? Caminar, comernos las uñas, el corazón, ¿no? Comienza a latigar, ¿verdad? Tal vez nos duele la cabeza. And then you can no respiras. Yeah, you feel like your lungs are being suppressed. You can't breathe right? Es un problema, no puedes respirar. So we see it physically and we say, that's anxiety. Okay, that's nervousness, y lo nombramos. But if we stop and we take a little bit of an auto-evaluation, o comenzamos a evaluar, como cuando llevamos al carro al mecánico y nos dice, no, esto es lo que está mal. No, like if we take our heart emotionally to the emotional mechanic and we start uncovering what's underneath and looking at, those plugs and wires, we're like, oh, what's going on? Cuando comenzamos a destapar y ver qué es lo que está pasando, como cuando llevamos a un carro, ¿no? Al mecánico, podemos descubrir que hay otras cosas debajo de estos síntomas de ansiedad. We start discovering that there's other things underneath the hood. Feelings of embarrassment, hurt, being overwhelmed, regret, rejected, jealousy, sad, grief. There's all these, so anxiety is like a secondary emotion, right? And there's all this other going on. And lots of times, it's a lot of these other things. It's not just one, right? It's multiple things that feed that circumstance. Así que muchas veces cuando destapamos and we look and we slow down and we observe what's going on in my heart, we start discovering there's something else. But oftentimes, we don't slow down and we drink, I'm just going to have some wine tonight so I can sleep, right? En vez de observar los que está en esas emociones, we don't take the time to do that, and we do what instead? We do our escapes, check the phone, have some wine before I go to bed, do all of these things. So take a moment and go to that second page where it says feelings and write down what is it that you usually do to express your emotions. Do you act aggressively? Do you raise your voice? Do you ignore? What is it that you usually do? And so there's 2 questions here under feelings. So take the time and just answer those questions that are there. The first one is, how do you usually express your emotions? What are other ways you express it? And so there's actually 3 questions. So tomen un tiempo y escriban, respondan esas 3 preguntas que están ahí en esta página donde habla sobre las emociones.
I have a question. How long, when you have anxiety, how long, if you think it persists until it becomes clinical?
That's a very good question. So, ¿cuánto tiempo persevera la ansiedad hasta que se gire algo más clínico? So we're going to talk a little bit about it in a moment. I'm going to ask you to hold your question. And then if I don't answer it, then remind me.
Don't worry.
Se la vamos a responder en un instante. So the reason we're doing this is to become a little bit more self-aware. So la razón por la cual le pido que haga esto es para tener un poco más de autoconocimiento de qué es la tendencia. What do we tend to do? So we can observe it and then say, what I need to do is maybe journal, consider, go for a walk, take a moment and actually figure out what's under the hood and discover it so it later doesn't get the best of me. Así que a veces lo que tenemos que hacer es detenernos, observar, ver cuál es nuestra tendencia para luego corregir y decir, tengo que en realidad observar qué es lo que está pasando en mi corazón, en mi mente. And oftentimes that's why we go to a professional counselor and or a therapist that will help us do that, because it's hard work. Muchas veces por eso es que vamos a un consejero, a un psicólogo para que nos ayude a observar, porque es trabajo y no estamos acostumbrados a hacerlo. So now, how does anxiety take over? So let's take a look at this. And, what is it that happens with anxiety? ¿Por qué es que la ansiedad no nos permite dormir? Why is it that anxiety doesn't let us sleep and we're tossing up at night? Right? And we're overwhelmed and it's exhausting and it creates fatigue. Why is it that it does all these things? ¿Por qué es que la ansiedad nos sobrecarga, nos ocasiona dificultad durmiendo y todos estos problemas? So we already talked about the roller coaster ride. Vimos el ferrocarril, ¿verdad? Y aquí hay un ejemplo. Here's an example of just life, throwing us things, tirándonos cosas. Antes de la pandemia, before the pandemic and post-pandemic, right? So before the pandemic, antes de la pandemia, we all kind of had the roller coaster of life, emotions, right? Going up and down, things happened, difficult things, but the waves would just kind of go up and down, ¿verdad? Normal. Then what happened during the pandemic? The waves were like, a death in the family, your business closing down, I lost my job, right? You turn left and right, ¿verdad? Las circunstancias venían una contra otra, y ahora de repente este sub y baja es constantemente, right? It was a lot to have this up and down of situations jumping at you constantly. So you don't have that much time to recover. So one of the reasons why it's so hard and why anxiety overwhelms is because there isn't as much time to recover from one experience to the other. Una de las razones por las cuales la ansiedad nos sobreagota es porque a veces no tenemos suficiente tiempo de recuperarnos entre un evento al otro. Right? We just one thing and another. And there's seasons in life. This is an example of COVID because I think it's a universal experience. Aquí le puse el ejemplo de COVID porque es un ejemplo universal que todos nos podemos, no podemos tener la experiencia. Entiendo que a algunas personas no les fue tan mal, pero es algo que supimos que muchos no lidiamos con difíciles circunstancias. So a lot of us dealt with this. But it could be just a season. You know, we're talking about the sandwich generation, right? Where you're maybe taking care of your parents and your kids, and you're just dealing with one thing after another. Puede ser simplemente etapas en la vida que estás lidiando con una cosa y la otra, and it's just constant, right? It's a lot, so it could be tension. So one of the reasons why it's very difficult that the anxiety perseveres, no la única, pero una de las razones es no hay suficiente tiempo de descanso entre un evento al otro. Entonces estamos muy tensos, right? There's not enough recovery time in between it. One of the things that the research shows us, una de las cosas que nos dicen las investigaciones, es que la resiliencia, one of the things that research shows us is that resilience is tied to how much recovery time we have, how much time we have to rest. And I'll explain resilience in a little bit, but that's definitely one of the findings. Uno de los estudios es que la resiliencia está basada en cuánto tiempo tenemos para descansar entre una experiencia y la otra. All right, so common effects of stress. Muchas cosas nos pasan en el cuerpo. So the second reason why anxiety takes over, la segunda razón por la cual la ansiedad nos sobreabruma es porque el cuerpo absorbe la tensión. Right? So if we have all of these things happening to us and all these emotions are happening to us and we don't process them or deal with them and we keep stuffing all that mountain, all of those issues, they go somewhere. La segunda razón por la cual nos sobrepoderamos por la ansiedad es porque toda esa tensión la absorbemos en el cuerpo. We absorb it. And so we have tension that we experience in our body. Headaches, muscle tension, chest pain, change in sex drive, stomach upset, sleep problems. You know, just our body starts just breaking apart. Nuestro cuerpo comienza a deteriorarse por todos estos síntomas. Dolor de cabeza, tensión, fatiga, que el estómago, que no puedo dormir. On your mood, right? Now all of a sudden, my mood, I'm irritable. I'm restless. I don't feel like doing things, no? Ahora no tengo ganas, no tengo motivación. I'm exhausted. I'm really angry, no? Estoy enojado. I'm really upset. Someone says the slightest thing and I'm already barking at them. Me dicen cualquier cosita y ya le estoy gritando, ¿verdad? Entonces, impacta nuestro estado de ánimo, la ansiedad, la motivación, sobrecargado, el enojo, la tristeza. And then on your behavior, en la conducta, ¿verdad? Que comemos mucho, como lo dijimos, al alcohol, el tabaco, all these things we start doing, and this is a result, right? So all of that, our body starts holding on to all of that behaviorally with our mood, and then it just starts to pile on. And so all of a sudden, then we start manifesting. So la segunda es porque nuestro cuerpo mantiene cuenta. All right, so then how it works neurologically in our body, cómo esto todo se involucra en nuestro cuerpo, es que tenemos órganos. We have all these organs and they work beautifully. I'm not going to go so much into detail, but I just want to highlight a couple of things in here. No voy a meterme y dar toda una clase de ciencia, pero solamente quisiera traer algunas observaciones. You know, our respiratory system, what's it responsible for? No, el sistema respiratorio. Tenemos oxígeno, right? We can breathe. And what happens? Ya lo dijimos, cuando tenemos el estrés, corta de respiración, right? When we have stress, we have that shortness of breath, right? Rapid breathing, and so then we can't think straight. We don't have enough oxygen in our brain, right? And we need oxygen. That's where we're thinking. Our prefrontal cortex needs that. It's where we make the executive decisions. We're not getting oxygen. We can't think straight, so we freeze and we get overwhelmed. ¿verdad? Entonces viene la tensión, nos sobrecargamos, no tenemos suficiente oxígeno en la parte frontal del cerebro, que es la parte ejecutiva, y ahí nos frenamos. So it's so important, right, to just breathe right. And we're gonna try and exercise in a little bit. But our respiratory system is impacted, la parte respiratoria. The cardiovascular system, la parte cardiovascular también es impactada, right? The heart and blood vessels, they nourish, they provide oxygen, and we have this acute stress and chronic stress. Entonces, también vemos que el sistema nervioso, the nervous system, is impacted. So the nervous system has several divisions. El sistema nervioso tiene varias diferentes divisiones, incluyendo básicamente el cerebro. So basically, right, the brain. So this is what happens when we are under acute stress. And I'm going to take a moment and just describe this. Esto es lo que pasa cuando estamos bajo demasiada tensión, demasiado stress. Un psicólogo lo llamó el amygdala hijack, el secuestro de la amígdala. Y es que en el cerebro, in our brain, we have, a lot of different organs, right? And so we have the amygdala. En el cerebro tenemos la amígdala. Entonces, el amígdala es la parte responsable por las emociones. It's the central part of the brain, basically responsible for our emotions. We've got our hippocampus, right? That's responsible for what? For memory. Diferentes órganos responsables por diferentes cosas. Y entonces sucede que cuando tenemos una situación, when we have a situation, when we have a circumstance that's just very stressful, right? COVID, you name it. We didn't expect it, a car accident, right? Something very difficult, and it just hits us. It bypasses the logic center and goes straight to what we call the primitive brain. Entonces, cuando tenemos algo estresante, no va por la parte lógica, la parte prefrontal, no nos detenemos, and we don't take these slow and thoughtful 1, 2, 3. We don't do what you suggest. Oh, let's do a list of, what are the possibilities and what are the cons. We don't stop and detain. We're not thinking. Instead, we go to that primitive brain. En vez de detenernos y pensar y ver los pros y los contras, lo que pasa es que el cerebro triggers adrenaline and testosterone. The hormones, those are what las hormonas comienzan a ser activadas. Y entonces, ¿qué pasa? Cardiovascular, right? El corazón comienza a latigar más rápido, right? Our heart starts, right? Pumping faster. Nuestro corazón comienza a latigar más fuerte y hablamos más rápido. We start talking faster, right? Or as more blood is pumped, it creates more anger, more rage, more anxiety, right? Comenzamos a tener más emociones fuertes. And guess what? It takes how long? 20 minutes at least for us to calm down. And that's assuming you don't have like a lot of history of trauma, because for a lot of people, when they have a history and experience of trauma, this could be way longer. But just depending on who you are, right? But at least at the very minimum 20 minutes. So por lo menos toma 20 minutos para uno calmarse, pero puede durar mucho más tiempo dependiendo en quién eres. Y particularmente si has experimentado trauma en la vida, eso puede tomar días, horas, mucho más tiempo. Yeah.
Is this the fight or flight response?
Right, a little bit of that. A little bit of that, not quite, but kind of along those, yeah. So, now let's look at the mental health implications. Now that just happened, right? Esto es lo que pasa en el cuerpo fisiológico, en esta onda que tenemos de la vida y nos pasan las cosas. These are just things that happen to us. And so if we look at this flat line, that's not real life, right? We already established that life is a roller coaster. Things happen, right? Stress happens, right? There's emotions. You wake up one day, you have an argument with your spouse, right? La vida nos pasa, tenemos partes estresantes. So the flat line, no, that's no good. That's death. That's terrible. You have a heartbeat. Things are happening, right? We have a wave of emotions. So that's how it is. So what is clinical depression? Or what are we talking about when you talk about generalized anxiety? Right? Si sabemos que la vida es un ferrocarril de emociones y tenemos eventos, experimentos y nuestro cuerpo actúa, what is mental health? When are we talking about depression or anxiety? What is that? ¿Qué es la ansiedad? ¿Qué es la depresión? So ya cuando hablamos de depresión o ansiedad, o todos estos síntomas, we're looking at, really, it depends, no, depende en si es ansiedad o depresión, y el diagnóstico clínico, right? It depends on what kind of diagnostic it is, and I'm not going to sit there and break up all the DSM for you, but generalmente, dependiendo en el diagnóstico, tú estás viendo que tienes un cluster, you typically have a cluster of symptoms, right, that are consecutively occurring and that are impacting how you function and your ability to manage your life, your work, your school, your responsibilities. Por lo general, cuando estamos hablando de un problema de salud mental, es síntomas consistentes que experimentas todos los días y que impide cómo funcionas en la vida. Para la depresión, eso es 2 semanas por lo menos, todos los días, right? That you just cannot get up from bed, or that you just, for 2 weeks, you just can't make it. It's not an issue of willpower. It's not an issue of you just don't have it in you. It really is, you've got a cluster of symptoms, things like hopelessness, despair, exhaustion. So that's why I have the green line, right? And then with anxiety, what do you think it might be? You might see more of the peaks, right? So with depression, you're looking at things like reduced interest in activities that are normally pleasurable, insomnia or increased need for sleep, lack of appetite or an increased need to eat, recklessness, irritability or lack of energy and fatigue, trouble concentrating and attending to usual tasks, poor self-image, suicidal thoughts. This is not exhaustive, this is just an idea. Para la depresión puede ser este tipo de síntomas, no es exhausto, pero son síntomas como no tener el interés de hacer actividades que por lo general disfrutabas, insomnia, que no puedes dormir, falta de apetito o quieres comer más, estás irritable, no puedes concentrarte, por más que intentas, no puedes concentrarte. Y no te sientes bien sobre tu imagen. For anxiety, it's things like fear, panic, anxiety over situations, excessive worry, physical symptoms. Síntomas como el temor, el pánico, la ansiedad, simplemente preocuparse excesivamente y síntomas físicos. Now, I already said we all have moments when we feel anxious, and we all have moments that we feel depressed. Todos tenemos tiempo donde nos sentimos deprimidos, de mal humor, o con ansiedad. It's part of life. But when it's debilitating and these symptoms are consistent, and you just are not able to move forward, then we're talking about something more clinical. Cuando debilita y es consistente, y por más que quieras, no puedes, ahí estamos hablando sobre algo clínico. Then that's when you just suspect, and you just don't feel good, and you start being worried, that's when you just make an appointment with a counselor, and that's why we have Maria Cornejo here, and just all these resources that you can tap into. When you're not feeling yourself, you even doubt it, or you even think that you might have it. That's why it's better to get support and the help that is needed. So, some of the things that we do that lead to all of this, muchas de las cosas que hacemos que perpetúa esto, es que cuando tenemos una emoción, we escape being conscientious of the feeling. So a lot of times when we feel something, when we have that emotion, we don't really want to look at the emotion because it's painful, it's uncomfortable, it's not fun to feel gross, despair, pain. I mean, who wants to do that? No queremos sentarnos y ver el dolor y enfrentar. Es incómodo. Entonces, what we tend to do is we cut off the feeling, push it aside. No lo queremos observar porque es incómodo. And we turn to todas las cosas que hacemos, las drogas, el alcohol, una bebidita, all of these things we do to escape because that is an uncomfortable situation. Well, what happens if we do that a lot with this wave of problems? ¿Qué pasa si constantemente we keep pushing aside those feelings? And then we have this crazy wave of stuff. And just everything, we keep pushing it and pushing it. And maybe we just keep pushing it just because we have no time, because we're really busy. Tal vez lo hacemos porque no tenemos tiempo, estamos ocupados. Or we don't feel like we have a safe space. No tenemos un espacio, alguien con quien desahogarnos, right? So we just don't have that time or opportunity. But if we perpetually do that, then we already saw our body keeps score. Our body just keeps score. So to go ahead and take a moment, given your situation that you wrote, and write on this page, there's a big, long, big page. And I just want you to take a few minutes and just write down all of the feelings that you have had, or that you had, or below, if you already used this page, below that you had regarding that situation. And it could be more than one feeling. So just jot down all the things that situation provoked in you. So the idea is to take a moment and start observing, just observing. La tarea aquí es observar. It's just to start observing what's going on in your body. Do you feel the tension? Pay attention to it. Tomar siento esta tensión. Let me just pay attention to it and see what's going on with my heart and see how that connection. So la primera tarea es simplemente observar. Notar cuando hay un evento, una circunstancia, cuando se levanta, observar qué es lo que está pasando en mi cuerpo y qué es lo que está pasando en mi corazón. So it's just doing that self-checkup, becoming, like that little diagnostic when you go to the car mechanic, that they plug it in and it tells what's wrong, right? So your first little diagnostic check is, what's going on in my body? What do I feel? And not ignore it and not let it slide. That's the first thing. And then as you start noticing that, you start noticing patterns. Oh, I noticed that, this situation keeps provoking in me this. Oh, every time I feel lost, I don't like feeling lost. I want to have a sense of control. I don't like things being out of place. I notice each time something happens that makes me feel like I'm lost and I don't have control, I lose it. So you start making little patterns as you observe, and then you start then being able to catch it before you get there, because you intervene before. Entonces, lo primero que tenemos que hacer es observar, notar qué es lo que está pasando en mi cuerpo, qué es lo que está pasando en mi corazón, detenerlo, verlo, así como el mecánico que le ponemos el plug y nos dice qué es lo que está pasando. Un asesoramiento individual. ¿Qué es lo que está pasando en mi cuerpo, en mi corazón? Observar. Y luego uno va notando patrón. Oh, cada vez que me pierdo, que siento que no estoy en control de la circunstancia, ahí comienza la ansiedad a subir. Comienza, ¿no? Y lo siento acá. Y cuando uno comienza a notar ese patrón, entonces uno puede intervenir antes de que llegue un ataque de pánico o que me siento que no, que el mundo me va a chocar. So, esa es la tarea que tenemos que hacer. Ahora, just the last point here about feelings, este último punto de las emociones, es que no significa que porque tengo emociones voy a ser gobernado por ellos. So it doesn't mean that because I'm noticing my emotions that I'm going to act on my emotions. It doesn't mean I'm going to think on my emotions. It doesn't think I'm going to assume that what I feel is a fact. No, in fact, by understanding what my emotions are, then I can ensure that I'm not governed by them and that I'm not making decisions by them. Because actually what happens is that when we are not aware of them, then we act on our emotions, right? Such as the adolescent that gets mad and punches a hole in the wall, right? Doesn't understand what's going on, so then he acts. So in reality, being able to observe and knowing what's in our emotions gives us more ability to have self-control and not think on our emotions, manage them. So primero tenemos que observar las emociones, no para ser gobernadas por ellas, no para decidir por ellas, no porque son hechos, pero más bien para poder lidiar. So I'm not going to be like, oh, I don't feel like going to work today, so that means I'm not going to go to work today. No, that's not what I mean, ¿verdad? No siento ir a la escuela. No estamos hablando de eso. So I just want to define that, because I know that's a popular idea out there too. Really quickly, assumptions. So feelings come, las emociones nos llegan, you just have them, and you're not going to necessarily control them. They just happen. Las emociones te llegan y no las van a controlar. But what is it that can help with that? Remember I showed you that bell curve with the volume and the numbers and the range? Les mostré la curva de las emociones con el volumen y cómo algunas se intensifican. So what is it that helps those emotions kind of taper down and not be as intense? No, ¿qué es lo que ayuda para que no nos sintamos tan nerviosos? o tan agotados? What is it that helps us kind of taper them down? One of the things is our thoughts. Una de las cosas que nos ayudan a bajar el volumen, one of the things that helps us lower the volume of those emotions is managing our thoughts, es manejando nuestras emociones. So if I jump to that first idea that I have, and I believe that it's true, and I anchor down on it, y creo que es verdad, y ahí me comprometo, pueda esa idea ser negativa y le doy un giro negativo y ahí me quedo. So you can just have this idea that comes to your mind, and you're going to believe it, and you're going to jump on it, and you're going to get worse. Oh my goodness, the bears are going to come, and it's going to get dark soon, and then we're going to be lost in the pyramids. No one knows where we're at, right? I could create a whole story because I've seen enough movies, right? And then what am I doing? I'm going to get more hyped up. What am I going to do? I'm going to start thinking straight. And even the route is around the line. I'm not going to even see it because I'm so overwhelmed. So, ¿qué va a pasar? De repente comienzo a pensar negativamente y todos esos pensamientos van a gobernarme y se me va a hacer difícil. Entonces, what we can do is slow down and think about what we're thinking. So, when you're in an emotive state, what is the problem with assuming that the first idea or thought that pops in your brain about this current situation is the right one? Cuando estás en ese momento emotivo, ¿cuál es el problema de asumir que la primera idea que te llega es la correcta? Why? What do you guys think? ¿Por qué piensan? Cuando uno está así muy emotivo. ¿Por qué piensan que esa primera idea is not the best one? Yeah, because of the amygdala hijack, right? Like we're just overwhelmed and perplexed and we're not thinking straight. And our first idea might not be the right one, right? It might be based on expectations, experiences from the past. It might not have anything to do with the reality. Muchas veces lo que primero se nos ocurre está basado en nuestro pasado, algo que vimos, una película, no necesariamente basado en la realidad. And we're just janking up the emotion. We're making it stronger, and it might not necessarily need to be. So assumptions, the way you recognize them, una de las maneras que reconoces esas suposiciones, one of the ways, is when we start saying things like should, or always, right? Or never. These little words are indicators that you're kind of giving it too much weight to those ideas, because then you start really clinging on to that. So a great coping mechanism, a thing for you to think about, is to start recognizing what are you saying to yourself. ¿Qué es lo que te estás diciendo? And those ideas are tied to what we call core beliefs. Things like, I'm bad, I can't do anything right. So how do you start thinking that you're going to feel if you start saying that to yourself? Si comienzas a decirte cosas, ¿no? Como nunca, yo debería, siempre, ¿no? Entonces eso es una indicación que estás teniendo pensamientos negativos. Y esos pensamientos negativos pueden estar ligados, ¿verdad? A estos pensamientos, no sirvo, ¿no? Or a good one is, I'm smart, I will succeed if I try. That's a good one, right? Yo sí puedo, ¿verdad? Or something more negative, I am unlovable. No me pueden amar. Eso hace que uno se sienta, ¿qué? Más deprimido, más triste. Or people are untrustworthy. I can't trust anyone. Or the world is dangerous. So all of these are tied to core beliefs that sometimes can lead us to this negative spiral, right? This negative spiral that's difficult to control. So estos pensamientos pueden estar junto de estas ideas, y cuando le damos mucha vuelta y lo pensamos, es como un tornado, ¿verdad? Un tornado que da vuelta y vuelta y vuelta, y nos quedamos estancados y no nos movilizamos. So sometimes these negative ideas and these negative thoughts, when we don't stop them, they can become like a tornado and destroy everything in its path, or including ourselves. They self-sabotage. So our thoughts are very powerful. And so one of the ways that we can repair is asking ourselves, wait a second, am I making it up? You know, Or is there another way that we can see the situation? Nos podemos hacer la pregunta, ¿me lo estoy inventando o hay otra manera de ver la situación? Just to slow down. And again, this is how a therapist can help you. Y esto es como un consejero te puede ayudar si tienes la tendencia de sobrepensar las cosas. And sometimes it may be because it's another clinical thing. So sometimes you may be stuck in your thinking pattern because it could be something that's more like obsessive and it needs a little bit more treatment. So muchas veces tenemos otras tendencias clínicas como un tipo de obsesión y que tenemos que buscar un asesoramiento cuando simplemente tenemos pensamientos que nos llegan y se nos hacen difíciles de controlar. So sometimes we have these intrusive thoughts and it's difficult to manage them and control them. And in those instances, it could be something else that's clinical that we can get help and then move forward. So whether it's your emotions that you need to work through or whether it's your thoughts, those are two powerful areas that you need to do some auto-evaluation, consider to be able to move forward. So in the last few minutes that we have, we're going to talk about how do we then repair. What can we do with all of this? Guess what? Good news. All roads lead to resilience. So regardless of what you do, all the research shows that there's so many things that you can do that are helpful. So what is resilience? Lo buenas noticias es que todas las vías que tomamos nos ayudan a tener resiliencia. Hay muchos estudios que muestran que cualquier cosa que hagas, muchas de estas cosas te van a ayudar. Lots of things help you resilience. One simple way that I think of resilience is a slinky. You know, when you think of a slinky, what happens? Just bounces back up, right? So algo sencillo, no sé cómo decir slinky, pero slinky, ¿no? Que sube y baja. Is how quickly do you bounce back up? ¿Cuán rápido simplemente te puedes superar ante la circunstancia? Resolte. So, ¿cuán rápido te puedes recuperar? Right? That's one simple definition of resilience. ¿Cuán rápido te puedes recuperar ante la circunstancia? Y ya vimos que el descanso es una de ellas. So we just saw that one of the things that helps us be resilient is rest. So we work ourselves so hard and we're constantly thinking about, so if, let's say you have a 9-to-5 job. Vamos a suponer que tienes un trabajo de 9 a 5. Y dices, ya trabajé. But you get home and then you're dealing with family stuff. Llegas a la casa y estás lidiando con la tensión en la casa. Then you're thinking about the thing at work. Todavía estás pensando en lo que pasó en el trabajo. En la noche, you're tossing in bed and you're thinking about the things with your home and now your work. Estás pensando. You're constantly working, right? Your mind is constantly working. So we haven't really rested, right? And then how do we rest? Oh, I'm going to take my phone and see news. Entonces ahora voy a prender el teléfono y voy a ver las noticias. Am I resting? I'm not resting. Stimulation. So one of the ways that honestly we build resilience is building rest. Una de las maneras de recuperar es interveniendo descanso, because we need it. We also need concrete support, other people that we can talk to, literally that we can vent and talk about what's going on so we're not keeping it in. So that's why social support versus isolation is super important. Necesitamos apoyo de otras personas para que no nos aislemos, para poder platicar, desahogarnos. Resilience with other parents, right? Meeting with other parents, if this is the case. And then social and emotional competence is really around what we've talked about, being aware of our emotions. So recovery period, lack of recovery equals increased incidence of health and safety. So cuando no tomamos tiempo para descansar, dicen los estudios que aumenta los problemas que tenemos en nuestra salud y hasta la seguridad. So we will be more, we can have an accident literally because we're just so agitated that we're not paying attention. So lack of rest, right? This is what it means. So the key is, we're going to have things happen to us. You're going to try. You're going to get up, but you got to stop. And then you got to actually rest to recover, and then you try again. You try again. You get up again. But we have to build that in. So, ¿qué es lo que tenemos que hacer? Cuando nos pasa algo, okay, uno intenta y luego tenemos que parar y darnos el tiempo para descansar y luego intentamos. So how do you do that? Well, if you're working all the time, maybe you need to do an app that has forced stop times, right? Si estás trabajando constantemente, bajar una app que te ayude a parar el tiempo y no estar constantemente, ¿verdad? It could be going for a walk, for a jog, taking a bath, listening to music, drawing with your kids, right? It could be so many different things, and it depends on who you are. But instead of waiting for this vacation that's going to happen in, 2024, you got to do it every day, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes here, an hour here, 2 hours here. En vez de esperar por una vacación mágica que va a pasar el próximo año y luego después que regrese a la casa estás igual de cansada, tienes que hacer tiempos de descanso que sean 5 minutos, 10 minutos, todo a través del día para recuperarte constantemente. And that is really key to being able to build resilience. So there's 7 types of rest that we need. We need physical rest, sleep. So there's a whole thing about sleep hygiene, so that could be a whole other topic, Maria. Right? Te necesitamos descansar y dormir es tan importante. Necesitamos descansar mentalmente, from all the work that we have. We need to slow down and literally just be like Einstein and sit under the tree and do nothing. Tenemos que simplemente dejar de trabajar, dejar de pensar y ver el árbol y descansar y ver el río y los pajaritos and no pensar. We have to stop. Emotional rest, right? Necesitamos descanso emocional. And sometimes that's, a cathartic moment with a therapist or a friend. A veces eso es simplemente descansarnos emocionalmente. But it could be journaling, where you're just really just writing down all your feelings or drawing them out or, a painting, right? Doing something creatively to get it out of your system emotionally. It could be spiritual rest. So if you're someone of faith, right, you can go and prayer might be what you need. Creative, sensory. So sensory, you might need to just stay away from things electronically. And social rest for you, if you're an introvert, it might be that you need to go in a forest preserve for a walk by yourself. But if you're an extrovert, it might be that you need friends, right? Depending on who you are. Entonces hay 7 tipos de descanso. Puedes descansar físicamente, mentalmente, emocionalmente, espiritualmente, creativamente, socialmente. No, y cada una de estos componentes son importantes de hacer a través del tiempo. I'm not saying you have to do all of this every day. No estoy diciendo que tienes que hacer todo esto todos los días. But rhythms of all of this is important, right? Tener oportunidad. And some of this is going to be more important for you, and some of it is going to be more important for you. Cada uno de nosotros tenemos componentes. I mean, there are people that only need 6 hours of sleep or 4 hours of sleep. So, I don't know who that is, but not me, ¿verdad? Dependiendo en quién somos, algunos necesitamos 4 horas de dormir. No soy yo. La mayoría necesitamos 8. Dependiendo en quiénes somos, algunos de esos componentes van a ser más importante que otros, ¿verdad? So, la cosa es conocer qué es el tipo, de ejercicio. Así que tenemos que conectarnos con otros. We have to connect with others. Exercise, be grateful, serve others, and distract ourselves. Those are just some things that we can do to be able to just build that resilience, ¿verdad? Conectarnos con otros, hacer ejercicio. La gratitud, gratitude, is amazing how much science there is around just practicing gratitude every day. So if you're just waking up very negative and upset, just having these gratitude manifestations. I'm grateful for the coffee that I have this morning. I'm grateful for little things, just writing them down. And that has been shown to have so many benefits for your body, for your mind, for your well-being. Algo tan sencillo como la gratitud. Todos los días manifestar las razones por las cuales están con esa gratitud puede ser de mucha ayuda. Serving others. El servir a otros. Amazing research. Un montón de estudios muestran que cuando servimos a otros, eso nos ayuda a sentir orgullosos de nosotros mismos, estamos contribuyendo y ese factor nos hace sentir bien. When we're serving, when we're volunteering, when we're giving in some shape or another, that has tremendous impact in our well-being and has been found to counter the effects of medical problems that you wouldn't even expect, as well as emotional problems. So these are all things, all of these pathways. So the idea is choose one. Choose one thing that you can do today to help your well-being. So write down in your piece of paper somewhere, what is one thing that out of all of these things that I shared with you today, you think you can start doing, tomorrow morning? Yes.
You didn't answer my question.
You see, I was going to forget. No le respondí la pregunta de la señora. And then your question was more clinical, like how long in terms of...
Yes, I'm not thinking myself, I'm thinking somebody else. Or has he become a junkie? I'm almost thinking enjoys this anxiety, just so others will come and see it and help them.
Yeah, so the question is, how long does someone have symptoms that you start saying that's generalized anxiety versus that's just you're a little nervous or you're overwhelmed? I mean, we have to do a diagnostic individually. So la pregunta que ella tiene es, ¿cuánto tiempo uno sabe si una persona tiene ansiedad generalizada o simplemente está nervioso? And I'm careful to want to answer that question because I think it's individually based and we would have to,
My daughter already has examined him, and she thinks it's hopeless. And I do think, I'm beginning to think that some people, well, as I say, it's a positive for them because they take pity from others and then they can't do this. And it'll pour me in crap, I'm sick of it. This is what I have to put up in my family.
Yeah, the question that she has is when people get a gain from whatever medical, it could be a medical situation, it could be a mental health situation. Sometimes there's a secondary benefit to being ill because you get a reinforcement from it. So yeah, that is a thing. Helplessness, learned helplessness, all of these things are a thing, and it's a hard situation to deal with.
So
Yeah.
I can't do anything really.
Yeah, there's
I just put up with it.
yeah, or create boundaries. We can create boundaries around that. Yeah. Any other thoughts? You guys? Around her question?
I think it's always important to still encourage the person in your life to seek help, right? I mean, you can't force anybody, right? They have to make that decision, but as much as it can be frustrating for you, I think sometimes if it is something real and anxiety is really painful for people, then it's just encouraging them to, being the person who says, I don't know how to help you, but here's someone who can, just passing on that resource to you. It doesn't help your frustration, but it might help them.
Keep providing the service, and then you create boundaries for yourself so you're not being, taking advantage of it. Yeah?
Yeah, I've created a personal panic solution for myself. I've recognized that panic completely, incapacitates a person. Right? So what I'll do is I will indulge panic for 5 or 10 seconds, do a complete freak out, and I go, that's done. Now think and do smartly what you need to be doing for the situation. Indulge it, get the feeling, but get it done with, and now put your head on straight and figure out your way through it.
Yeah, so you're doing what we said, right? You're looking at the emotion and letting it actually wash over you and letting that process, and then you're going, okay, you gave yourself your time, now move on. Yeah, thanks for that. That works for some people. For some, it's a little bit overwhelming, so they need help from a clinician to help them move it, but yeah. Or, it's the same idea, like if you have a family meeting, okay, we're going to talk about all your complaints in this 1 hour, and then after that, we're good, right? You talk about it, but you create some boundaries around it. Entonces, la idea que él ofreció es que a veces hay que darse permiso de tener la emoción, como lo habíamos hablado, de permitir que le pase, pero ponerle un tiempo límite para que uno no se mantenga ahí mucho tiempo y luego entonces uno se moviliza y actúa. Yeah. So this is a parting thought. We are all kintsugi. Kintsugi is the Japanese art of repairing broken pottery with gold and lacquer. It's the philosophy that something broken can be remade into something even more beautiful. So So we're all broken. We all need healing. We all can get better. We can all grow. And it all can just flourish at the end. So, with that, I only gave you the talk about feelings and assumptions. And there's a QR code there. You can, on the book at the end, and you could just finish seeing the content online for the rest if you'd like. All right, that's my time. I don't know if you have any more questions or times for that.
A little bit